Thank you very much for being here today. We're here to talk about planning for Burbank's energy future. Here's the situation. Let me see if nope, wrong way. There we go. For the next 5 years or so, we're pretty much set. We know where our energy is going to come from, and we pretty much know what the costs are going to be for that energy. But beyond 2020 or so, we have opportunities now to shape the future beyond 2020 for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years beyond that. So that's what we're here to talk about. There's one question that I want to ask all of you up front, and how many of you are Burbank residents? So almost all of you. Congratulations. You, and I'm a Burbank resident as well. We are the owners of Burbank Water and Power. There are two different types of utilities, community-owned and investor-owned utilities in California. We're a community-owned utility. And that's why we're talking to people today and next week and throughout the month and all the time. We're always available to hear your comments because it's important to us to hear from all of you as to what you want. We're going to be looking at 3 specific issues today. One is renewable energy, how much is the right amount. The second issue is coal. And then we're going to talk a little bit different. We're going to go into rates. And specifically, we're going to talk about solar because there's a solar subsidy that's happening right now with our rates. So I'll try to plow through this, and then maybe we can break after the renewable and coal areas and have a discussion, and then we can go into the rate making, if that's okay with everyone. Sounds good? Okay. So this slide is really important for us. Always there for you is Burbank Water and Power's tagline. Joanne's laughing at me already. Very nice. 3 things that we have to balance all the time, and sometimes they are working against each other. Reliability, affordability, and sustainability. So how are we doing with those things that sometimes compete? Reliability, we're actually doing a very good job, and this chart might be kind of hard to read, but basically what it says is that if you live in Burbank, you on average experience an outage, an electrical outage, once every 3 to 4 years. And we work really hard to keep our reliability high, and we do that by investing in our infrastructure and investing in our personnel to make sure that they're really good at keeping our systems running. So does reliability come at a cost in your rates? Well, when we look at affordability, here's where we are today. Our rates are the second lowest, second only to LADWP right now. 10 years ago, this was not the case. Our rates were actually near the top of that chart. Not a really proud position for us. So over the last decade, we've been doing a lot of work to get our rates in line. So affordability has gone down. And what's interesting, I think, at this, during the same time period is what's been happening with sustainability. 10 years ago, so the chart on the left, 2004, 10 years ago, our majority resource for electricity was coal. And it says 45%, but if you look at that other orange slice of the pie that says market, that was largely coal. So 10 years ago, Burbank was like 70 to 80% of our energy came from coal. 2 years from now, we plan to be at about 35% renewables and about 32% coal. So what happened in 2006 or 7, 2006? Burbank became the first city in America to step forward and say renewable energy is important. And we are going to commit that 33% of our energy comes from renewable resources by the year 2020. And we're ahead of that target. So 2016 is when we think we're going to hit that target. And at the same time, there's a requirement throughout California that emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, be reduced to 1990 levels by the year 2020. In 2020, we think we're going to be at about 40% below that target. So that's what's going on with us. A little background to maybe help frame our discussion. So the first question for the group is going to be renewable energy. 33% has been our target by the year 2020. We're going to hit that. California, the state, now requires that of all electric utilities. They all have to hit that amount. What we want to know from the community, are we there? Should we continue? And if so, at what cost? How much are you willing to pay for more renewable energy? So when you think about this chart of how things kind of interrelate, adding renewable energy can impact reliability and it can impact affordability. Let me start with affordability. Oops, I'm on the wrong chart. Real quick, sorry. Our rate increases have been kept below the rate of inflation since 2004. So what that means is over the past decade, our rates, that top purple line, that shows what the nominal rate is. There have been rate increases. But when you put it into what's called real dollars and adjust for inflation, that's that gold line. So we have kept rates below the rate of inflation for the past 10 years. We're hoping to do that, continue to do that in the future. We think we can do that for the next 5 years or so. Beyond that, we're not sure. So now I'm at the affordability issue. Today, renewables cost about double what it costs for coal, and natural gas is kind of right in the middle. So when we ask the community, well, how much more might you be willing to pay? It's kind of a difficult question without knowing what the dollar impact is. So on the right, we have an example. So this is an example for a household that uses 1,000 kilowatt hours a month. Now, some households use more, some households use less. So it's just to illustrate, to give you an idea. The monthly bill impact with 33% of our energy coming from renewable resources, just the electric charge on your bill is about $69. If we were to go to a 50% of your energy coming from renewable energy, it would cost about $80. That $11 difference is actually about a 16% difference in costs, just to give you, a sense of where the rates could be. So that's not necessarily the rate increase, it could be the bill impact, your bill impact going up or down depending on how much energy you use. The point really is that we think that there's going to be a rate impact the more renewable energy we have. There's a second issue that has to do with reliability. Wind and solar are the projects that are being built now. The problem with wind and solar, they have a lot of advantages, but some disadvantages that they're intermittent. The wind blows when it blows, the sun shines when it shines, and at some point, neither is happening. But that doesn't mean your energy requirements have gone to zero. And I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on in California right now, specifically because of solar. And it actually has a name to go with the picture. It's California's duck curve. And I think you can all see why it's called the duck curve. So here's what happens. And that first, the top line, that's what utilities have planned for over many, many decades. Our energy use throughout a 24-hour day, it looks like this. It comes up in the morning, people are going to school, businesses starting. It peaks, and actually in Burbank, our peak is now late afternoon, 4 to 7 p.m. That's when the majority of energy is demanded during the day. And then we go to bed, it goes back down. So that's what kind of the energy line looks like. So that's what we've prepared for. Here comes solar, and before I move on, and where did I put my pointer? Let me use that. So this duck's belly, this trough is solar. So the more solar that comes online, the more solar energy is being produced during the day, right? And that's a good thing. But it has a couple of unintended consequences that we are dealing with. One is that when the sun goes down and all that solar energy goes offline, we have to get those power plants to quickly ramp up. And it's actually at the same time that energy demand is now at its very highest throughout the day, that 4 to 7 p.m. period when we peak. So power plants have to respond quickly. They're not very nimble. That's not the physics of how plants work. So that's one issue. On the other side of the day, when those power plants are coming online and energy from solar energy is happening, the power plants have to ratchet down. Now you can ratchet down power plants a lot easier than you can going, back up sometimes. But the problem is this red dotted line. What that shows here is if you take all your power plants to the minimum that they can perform at before you have to turn them off, and that is how power plants work. If that's the minimum, what we have here is a potential and a projection for overgeneration of solar energy. And energy is real time. Today it's real time. When you use it is when you have it. So you have to find a place for it. So this is actually a bit problematic for utilities as well. The problem for us is going to grow as solar grows. Solar is going to grow, and I don't mean to suggest that solar is bad, because it isn't. It has a lot of great environmental and other benefits. But we're going to have to, and not just Burbank Water and Power, it's every utility across California is having to deal with this. And I think what you're going to see in the future, probably in the near future, the next couple of years maybe, different types of programs to help encourage customers to use energy when energy is maybe more abundant, and maybe different rate designs. And I know someone had a question about rates, so we'll get into that later. So that's teeing up some information about renewable energy. Let me go to the second supply issue, which is coal. And the question for the community is, should Burbank stop using coal-generated electricity before our contract expires? Well, what does that mean? Well, we have a plant. There's a plant in Utah called the Intermittent Power Project. We are in an agreement, a legally binding agreement, through the year 2027 when the contract expires. During that time, we have costs that we can't avoid. But if the community would prefer to get us off coal, which is dirty, right? We all know that. So there is an advantage to getting off coal, but there is a disadvantage in terms of costs. We have to continue paying for those resources. Price is a big uncertainty, and not just for coal, it's for natural gas as well as for renewable energy. So looking beyond the year 2020, we're really not sure what prices are going to look like, and it will be impacted by all kinds of things, from fracking. Fracking is a big situation right now with natural gas. If fracking goes forward, if it's allowed in a big way, that probably will drive the price of natural gas down, so that maybe becomes a resource that's more affordable. Different things can happen with different types of regulation and legislation that could change the price situation for any of these fuels. So price uncertainty is a big issue for all utilities. But we wanted to give you, again, kind of a sense of coal's dirty. If we want to get off coal, knowing that we still have unavoidable costs, how much might it cost if we went from the 32% coal that we anticipate being at in 2 years? What if we went from 32% to no coal? And we think that the impact would be about an $18 per month difference if you use 1,000 kilowatt hours, and that is a difference of about 26%. Again, it depends. It will vary by how much energy your household uses, but there will be a cost impact. And I want to talk a little bit specifically about rooftop solar, and we've been there. We've talked about some of the good things about rooftop solar. It's sustainable. There are no greenhouse gas emissions, no transmission. It uses energy at the source, which is distributed generation, which is a wonderful thing. There's a community disadvantage that we haven't talked about yet, and it's the last one on the right. In part, rooftop solar is subsidized by non-solar customers, and here's how that works. Right now, your rate from Burbank Water and Power per kilowatt hour is about 15 cents. Of that 15 cents, the vast majority is made up of fixed costs. It's like if you have a car, you have your car payment and you've got insurance costs, and those don't vary by the amount of driving that you do. The one thing that does vary is your fuel cost, and that's analogous to our rate design. So we bundle the rate. That 15 cents is inclusive of all of our fixed unavoidable costs and our one avoidable variable cost, which is fuel. The more or less you use, the more or less we have to purchase and plan for. So the rate design is a little bit problematic because here's what happens in California. We have something called net energy metering. So if you have solar on your home, does anybody have solar? My neighbor has it. It's wonderful. Your meter moves forward as you get energy from the utility. So at night or when the sun's not up. But now the sun is up, you're producing electricity, your meter runs backwards, and we charge you the net amount. So that makes sense, except for the fact, if you think about it, that solar customer gets the full benefit of the 15-cent retail rate. But that rate includes variables that we can't avoid, costs that we can't avoid. What ends up happening, because those costs don't go away, everybody else is paying that cost. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So if you have a few systems in town, just a couple here and there, which was the case, a few years ago, it's not a big deal. We can absorb that cost, not a big deal. The little graph on the far left is where we're at today. We have about 200 solar installations in Burbank, and the rate of increase is pretty dramatic and has been pretty dramatic over the last few years. So today, that subsidy amounts to about $8 per year. So I don't have solar on my home. My additional energy costs are about $8 to help support the 200 solar installations that exist in Burbank. Now, over time, that's probably going to grow, and it might grow as high as, say, like $40. So that might be the annual subsidy of non-solar customers for solar in Burbank. So the question, I guess, who pays? Is the rate design appropriate? So right now, it's net metering, it goes forward, backwards. Should we bifurcate costs so that if you have solar, you can't avoid the fixed costs? You're still paying what might arguably be a fair share of that? Or is it fair that the community continues to support that because we get other community benefits, you could certainly argue, by having your neighbor have solar? So what do you think?
Hi, I'm Ron Davis, General Manager of Burbank Water and Power. As a community-owned utility, your input is important to us as we make decisions about powering Burbank in the years ahead. We want to hear from you. You can go online at burbankwaterandpower.com. You'll have the opportunity to review the town hall presentation and share your input electronically from the comfort of your home. We can also come to you. If you're part of a community group that would like BWP to present to your group, please give us a call at 818-238-3562. And remember, Burbank Water and Power is proud to always be there for you.